Okay, we are live once again. Let me not turn this on so you can hear it. Okay, okay, guys. So we are live, and I'm going to give it a few minutes and kind of get everything set up here for this. And we're going to do some talking now. 6:04. Typically, I try to lives to about 45 minutes. They may go longer once my community builds up and more people come on, but for the most part, it's just me here by my to myself. So there's no point to sit here and talk for 2 hours when I can do what I need to do in a few. But this episode, this live is a little different because I'm doing a lot here, showing just a lot of different things that I'm doing with this one. So it'll be a little different. Maybe I will share it on. Let's see. Let's go to maybe I go to a couple of my Facebook groups and see if anyone wants to come on and watch. But let's let's talk about a couple of things here. Um, First and foremost, let me address a couple of things because this week I went from 70 subscribers to 330. And I know that's not a lot, especially when you talk about the millions of subscribers that everyone else gets. But for me, that was a nice jump, and primarily because it was a website called Gadget Geek who linked to my the video on the getting images, consistent images out of. So that was what they linked to, and so it basically elevated my channel. And I got a few comments on the video, and one of the videos stated that while the title was good, what they thought was that the it wasn't consistent enough. The images that I created weren't consistent enough. Mainly the faces. I think in a couple of images, it was my superhero character, and they had the silver boots. And on another image, and that was the inconsistency of the image. And I kind of wanted to address that because one of the things is that I have to consider who I'm talking to, right? My audience is I'm called Quick Start Creative for a very specific reason. Because when it comes to technology, creativity, all of the different apps that come into play, there is this learning curve. Okay. And what happens in a lot of cases with the learning curve is that you can learn something pretty fast, and then you realize that you know nothing at all. And then there's the second wave of learning that takes place. And my thinking with Quick Start Creative was the first part. Get over the intimidation factor. Get to this place where we call it, you know, um, basically is the same way you call it. You are first. You start off being um, consciously incompetent and consciously incompetent. You know you don't know what you're doing, and that's that place where when you know that you don't know what you're doing is when you can start putting in effort. So we're talking about 20 hours or so where you can kind of self-correct yourself and make mistakes and you kind of get an idea of what you're doing. That's what Quick Start Creative is about. And my thinking was is that I'm not trying to teach you how to create a 100 page. I know another gentleman on in the comments, he produced a 100 page graphic novel using AI. I'm not trying to teach you that. I'm trying to teach you how do you get started with this and what are the directions you're trying to take in? What are some of the best practices and how can you get over the hump and remove the confusions because there's so much information out there. So that's what Quick Start Creative is for you to get started. It's for me to help you eliminate the need to go through all of the different YouTube channels just to figure out what are the basics. So that's what I'm teaching here. Get started, get over the hump, and then go look at all of these other guys who are doing great work and for that mastery. Okay. So there's a master, there's sensei, and I'm sensei. I'm who teaches you to get me to go meet the master. So that's how I put it. So that's what it's about. So let's go ahead and get started on what we're talking about tonight. And tonight it really comes down to this. We're going to talk about a story that I developed, and we're going to look at the process in which I developed. Now, storytelling in ChatGPT. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Because I like to write, I have my own way of doing it. So you're going to see that my process for writing a story really is a little different, probably more complicated than most people want, but I'll show you how to do it the other way of just like, hey, let's just get a story out there. But let's start with this story right here. And I have it all right here, so we can go through it really quick and just to get the overview of how I write stories. Okay, number one, this first part. Here's the original. This is not even a prompt. This is the story concept. This is what I come up with. So I'm not just telling ChatGPT because I wanted to write this story. So sometimes I don't have an idea for a story and I wanted to write one. So I had this idea for a story, and most of my stories are what we could consider flash fiction. They are happening in a specific space and time. Okay. And by that, I mean that the scene is fewer characters, not a lot of background information to the characters. We're going to let the character development happen in the middle of the story so you get a sense of the actions, who these characters are, versus me giving you a background to these characters. So that's how I do it. Henry, hello, Henry. Thank you for watching. So one of the things I want to put out there, so there's a way of prompting AI to get you the story, and then there are those times where I have the concept in mind. I know what I want to write, so I just wrote it. And you can see here is just me saying, "Hey, Ray is this guy. He's did a job for Marcus. Marcus is the shady underground dude, and hey, but Ray's there to get his money. All of a sudden, Duke walks in. Duke walks in and it's just like Duke is playing it coy, like it's just a regular visit. But Ray is kind of sitting there like this is a little odd. Turns out that the job that Ray did for Marcus was stealing from Duke. Duke didn't like that. Now Ray is there to get his money, right? He did the job. He wants his money. It just occurs to him that he robbed Duke, but at the same time, it's like I know Duke is gonna get at me when he finds out. But right now, I need my money. This is the story. It breaks loose. Ray gets out of there. The story ends with Ray in the back alley smoking a cigarette, just thinking about the world that he lives in. But I wrote this in a way that none of these are good guys, right? These are all underground guys. Now, ChatGPT wants to make it a moral story. and that's where you're going to see that we're going to fight that process of ChatGPT making it a moral story. So here's the original prompt, and I told it write a 3,000 word story. I'm not expecting a 3,000 word story because I know it can't write it. It's going to come up short. And let's take a look at that. So, and show you exactly what it did. Okay, so the here is the story. All right, I gave it this prompt. This is the story it gave. Now you can see that it's 3,000 words. It turns out to be a 700 word story that it gives me, and so it writes it. And the one thing I noticed though that it gave me good dialogue, right? And so it gave me good dialogue in this, but um, it's kind of like it's it worked. It was a good start. Um, but the first prompt I had it write it in first person, but it's like I wanted. Um, I said, well, let's go third person present, and it's kind of that changes the scope of how it writes, and then it's like, okay, you know, all right, fine. It's not a bad story. If I were to let you read this, I'm not going to read it here, but I will put the link. I'm going to keep this live. I'll put the link up so you guys can get this later. In fact, you know what? Why don't I put the link in the chat so if somebody wants to read it, they can. Um, so I'll put the link in the chat, and I'll make sure I don't delete this. But I'll put the link there. So it's not a bad story, not at all, but it has some issues. So I went to part, and let's go to part two of writing the story. So um, I basically got to. This is part where I said, well, let's look at some different tenses. What are the different point of views that we can write this story? And you can see here that we went with gave me some of these, but none of these are the point of views I was looking for. So I went with Harry Bosch. If you know Michael Connolly, if you ever watch Harry Bosch, I'm a big Harry Bosch fan. So I want to know, well, what is that? How is that written? And that is third person limited. And essentially it's telling you what third person limited is. Third person limited is that you're the third person in the room, but you only understand what's going on in the protagonist's head. You don't know what the other characters are doing. So you're limited to that perspective versus when you're a third person present, you understand what everyone is thinking and what everyone is doing. Okay, so that's the difference. And so I wanted it written like this. So you wrote it, and as soon as it did it, it broke. It basically broke, right? So now we broke. So revise because it's rushing through the story. I mean, you can see that it's not even close, like 500 words. So it completely rushed through this story. So that was an issue. So then we said, okay, you're rushing, keep going. And again, I'll put this link in there so you guys can, if you want to read all of this. And I'm really pushing it. Here's why I'm pushing ChatGPT. Give me more words. Because what's going to happen is that eventually I'm going to get this story and I'm going to do some edits. Okay. And so it keeps going, and then it is I try to get it to 2,500, maybe 10,000 words. Wouldn't do it. Tell me you can't do it. So this is what I did. In order for it to get to the amount of words, um, you do have to push it. You have to push the AI to get what you want. But what I really wanted, what I did was give me an outline of the story. How does the story give me an outline of the story? And this typically what I would normally do for a longer story, that I would go with outlines and then write the outline individually. And with this short story, I could see that ChatGPT was having a little tough time with it. So I said, okay, just give me the outline. And we just got these story beats. And so we got the story beats, and that's what I went. I just said, okay, write the story beats, 600 words. So I gave it fewer words to write it, knowing that it's going to probably give me 400 or so. And you can see here, it starts using story beats as headers. I don't like that. And I was just like, no, the headers are only for reference, not to be put into the story. It still didn't follow the instructions, except now this time we got the first part of the story. Then we get to write the next couple of story beats. And you can see it did put the headers in there. But this time I just said, you know what, I'm gonna let it go and let it do what it do. And then I'll just get rid of those in the end. And you can see we got our, it came here, the climax, the escape aftermath, and the resolution. And then I took all of that, I did some edits, and I gave it back to it. And I said, okay, let's evaluate this. Let's go ahead and evaluate this versus the original. All right. And this is one of the things that ChatGPT does. It can really do an evaluation really well. So I've always, encourage people to do that. Okay. So we get the evaluation, and we get the uh, what's the atmosphere, what's the character dynamic, perspective, the pacing, potential. Here we go. We have some repetitive elements, all right? The resolution, the ending captures great determination and will, however, considering the intensity of the events he just witnessed, a bit more reflection on the immediate trauma or the larger implications for his life might add. This is what ChatGPT. This is how how let's just go ChatGPT. This is how the bot likes to write stories. It likes those big arching thesis is at the end. It likes the culmination of all of that. Um, Such a fan of that all the time. When I'm writing horror stories, whenever it's writing a horror story, it wants to create type of, you know, some sort of, hey, this is the end of the world, and this is how it impacts you. And sometimes I just like, I mean, it's just like, give me something that's evil for evil's sake. It doesn't have to make sense. And so that's my style. Is that when I'm writing stories, I really don't need good guys. I need degrees of good and bad in everyone. Then I need couple of guys who are just what they are. They're bad. So that's how I write. So went through some other things, kept going through it, did a couple of things, um, and then it did something, and this is why I came back. I'm not sure making it a conflict about his life. Ray wants, and then I'm giving it the context right here. I'm saying Ray wants to get out, but Ray is not a good guy. See, this is the part I have to get the bot to understand. Ray is not a good guy. He's just tired, and that's a difference between the characters. I don't want Marcus to die. They and one of the uh, in fact, I don't even want us to know what happened to Marcus or Duke. I want that goes through, does everything. It has it. We get our thing here, and I see if when I'm scrolling too fast, it kind of blanks out on me. So I'll slow it down. Okay. but that's the story. Okay. So this is how I write stories in with ChatGPT. If I have a story concept in my head, I simply give it the whole concept. This is how the story should lay out, and then I fight with it. Okay. And I go and I fight with it, and then at the end, here's the final story. I put it in Microsoft Word, and this is where I then put in my 2 cents. So I put my 2 cents in, I do my writing, I then take it over to 11 Labs, let 11 Labs, have at it, and then, uh, we just have fun with it. So, in fact, let's go to 11 Labs. So you guys taste of what the story sounds like? Let's go ahead and do that. Mm. Let me go offline so I don't be showing up my username and passwords, everything like that. Okay. All right. Now the next part of about this is then it is creating the images. And here is where we really get to play a little bit because I'm going to show you the style that that I like when it comes to this creating these stories. I have a very specific style that I tend to like. And let's go over here to projects. Oh, sign out. I got to sign into the right person. Okay, the orange seeds, cross lines. Okay. Now, the one thing about 11 Labs, what the 11 Labs did is that it allowed us to do these projects where we get one long contextual story. So we have three chapters. Here's the deal. There's the entry. There's the exit. Let me make sure that my let's see, share screen, entire screen. I'm going to turn on share my audio so we can. When it comes to this, with this creating these stories, I have a very specific style that I tend to like, and I think I picked Ryan as my voice. So let's go ahead and do this and play it. See what that sounds like. I got to sign it to the right person. And I'll tell you the good thing about this project section here because the way they've set it up, it does save you some money because it's going to convert. And I really actually thought I converted it all. 11 Labs did. We can check while that's converting here. The way the project works now is contextual.
Office was steeped in shadows, lit only by the sickly yellow glow of a single bulb. Dust motes danced in the stale air. Ray shifted in the creaking wooden chair, eager to finish this deal and leave.
Share screen, entire screen. I'm going to turn on share my. Oh, let's play it again because I got audio. Okay, didn't give me my. It's still processing that. Let me see. Let's see, will it process this? So that's still processing. I'll put up the story in in a little bit here. So I'm going to get the images and everything like that for it, and so we can take a look at that. But let's now take a look at the all right. Not sure what happened. Okay. Okay, so like I was saying, Henry, I will share. Let me just put in. Okay, so I'm going to share everything, um, only because well, that's what I'm here for. It's like we're not here. I'm not here to hold anything back. All right. So here are the scenes. So it gave me the 12 scenes, right? So that's all I wanted was the 12 scenes. And so it was a little weird the way it created the scene. So I gave it more context of saying this is Chicago. This is 2019, and have it redo the scenes just in case, just so I wouldn't get any cowboy type stuff. Um, one thing about one thing about AI is that the bias is there. Is that if I say hero, all my characters are going to be white, so I have to be really specific with the characters. And you'll see that in the next one. This next thing here is me designing the characters. Now, the thing again, this is part of knowing what I want, versus the AI giving me this information. So I can take this empty template and tell the AI, hey, go ahead and give me something and build this out. But then sometimes it is like, no, I want to I want to tell it who these people are. So I'll show that in a bit. But so this is basically the three characters. And again, there are other characters in this story. I know some henchmen and everything like that. But the main thing of it is that when I know the story, then I can I can direct it. Okay. I can direct it more. All right. So then I have my style. Now I had this is the style that I like. And this came from the last video, and I just carried this style over. I like the style, I carried it over. And then finally, how do we create the prompt? This here is the template I use to get the images. Of all the things that I will say that's really big in this is that this part here, this here is the driving force behind the images that I get. It will, it just sets the stage for it. So I get that, and then I'm just going to tell ChatGPT, okay, I've given you all of the information. You have the characters, you have the style, you have the template from which I'm going to create every single prompt. Okay, let's design the prompt. And if you notice, if you didn't notice, in this case, I'm working in GPT 3.5. And the reason I'm working in 3.5 when it comes to designing the prompt is because 3.5 tends to follow my instructions more thoroughly. It tends to do what I tell it to do and not veer off. So I like 3.5 for prompt design. So that is one of those things where I'm not going to Dolly 3 right away to prompt images. I'm in 3.5 to design the prompts. So I do prompt design here. And then I start getting my prompts. The one thing that I check for is that my subject. When we saw what the subject was, I want all of it here. ChatGPT likes to be creative, it likes to omit things. But when we are talking about creating these images, the issue with it is if I leave off African American, I'm not going to get an African American. They're not going to be black. They're going to be white with dark brown skin or something like that. Okay. So I wanted to say that the jersey, the high top sneakers, all of those things, if you leave it out, it won't assume, it'll just do it. All right. So there we have that. All right. So you can see we get our 12, we got our images, we got everything. And then all I do is come over and plug them in. Now that I have the images, I go and plug them in. You see? And here's the thing. One of the top ones, shot angle. The shot angle is one of those things where you get the different, that's where you can kind of drive the story a little bit more. Okay. So you get close-ups, you get low, you get wide angles, you get two characters in, another close-up. Now, I didn't ask for an extreme close-up. Okay, here's one. Let's talk about this. Violence in ChatGPT 3. It doesn't like it. So the one thing I had to do was I kept looking at here, like it would not generate the image. Couldn't figure out why. So I went in, I looked at it, and saw that we had deafening gunshot, dimly lit back office, wounded, um, terror. So all of these words kick off in ChatGPT to kind of like, okay, there's something going on here. So I went through and I kind of kept adjusting, and you can see here where I said Marcus is holding something in his hands. Okay, a deafening sound. I got rid of the word gunshot. In the dimly lit back office, Marcus is shocked and wounded. So the terror, the wounded, is the gun. It's the gun references that really turned ChatGPT off. Okay, and so once I got rid of that, then it gave me the image. Now this is where if I really want to use this image, you can see he's holding a boot. So this I'm not sure what he's holding, but and then Marcus changed, right? This is not my Marcus, but that's because when we look at the description of Marcus, we got Marcus, African American, medium brown skin, shaved head, wearing dark green button shirt, black velvet trousers. Well, it did say shaved head. Not sure why they didn't shave his head. All right. So let's see. Close up shot for you, marching African American man with a medium brown skin and a shaved head. That's not a shaved head. Maybe shaved and fade is the same to ChatGPT. So maybe the next one is should say bald. All right. Okay. But and we finally get Marcus done. I then went back and kind of asked for some B roll. Give me some B roll of some images and stuff. But that's pretty much my workflow. Okay. Now the thing about this is how I write stories. Okay. So let's do before we leave here, let's do a quick route of how would I write a story if I did not have a clue of what I wanted to do. How would I start? Okay. So let's go through that process here. All right. First and foremost, I am going to go with my custom instructions. Okay. So let me find my custom instructions here. I'm going to pull it up. Midjourney styles, personas. Okay. So here's my personas. I'm going to write a horror story. So I want my haunted scribe. So I'm going to start here. All right. So I'm going to start here. Copy the backdrop. All right. Go here. I'm going to turn on custom instructions. That's my background. And here is my so this is kind of I'm going to get rid of moral ambiguity, and we're going to go with the We'll go with the unsettling mundane. That's, I think this is what I write. And the unsettling mundane, this is, um, let's call this a finding fear in the everyday occurrences. I think we'll say regular. Okay, so we're gonna do that. All right. Okay. So here's how I would start. Okay. Um, I'm going to let's type this. I'm going to start with um, for let's talk about something real quick. One of the issues with ChatGPT is that it likes to kind of go to the what I like to say. It likes to produce outputs that are at the top the of the bell curve, which means that it aggregates itself to an average. And when you're trying to write a story, you're not trying to do the average. So how do you get it to get outside of that? So one of the things I'm going to do is that I'm going to have it forego all the top um, 10 themes, tropes, storylines of horror movies, of horror stories, thrillers, and suspense. Okay, so all right. So I first want to get rid of the top 15, right? So once I get rid of the top 15, now I can get maybe force it to get into some um, different type of stories, right? So here's the thing: seemingly Monday routine. Okay, and is going to force itself to do this, but this is where the iteration starts. What AI is doing for us is getting rid of the blinking cursor on the blank page. That's what we're trying to avoid here. So when we're going through this process here, our number one goal is to not have a blank page. Where the idea is coming from. Okay, so we can take a look at these stories. The seemingly mundane routine job of piano tuner becomes a sinister journey to the uncanny valley where the piano in a small town begins to tune themselves to the delinquent melody that only children seem to hear. Okay, I think we have something here. Our protagonist, an unassuming piano tuner with synthesizers, arrives in town where every piano head begins to resonate the disturbing harmony that introduces behavior shifts in local children. As the pianists try to understand the phenomenon, they uncover the long lost composition said to be written in the eccentric composer who vanished without a trace. So there's some still some standard tropes here, right? There's some standard tropes here, but there's a theme we can play with. Okay. Okay. A series of eerie lifelike mannequins appear to the various storefronts, each bearing the uncanny resemblance of the townspeople who have recently disappeared. Now, now this right here, this right here reminds me of a story that I did write. Um, and you can see it on my YouTube channel, The Final Trial. That's a story I wrote and then put it to AI. But that mannequin thing is kind of a is it kind of relates to the it can kind of relate to um yeah, I guess it can relate to a Twilight show that I saw once. All right, final theme. A mysterious phenomenon causes individuals to experience the fears and traumas of others through everyday objects they touch, leading to contagious web of paranoia and hysteria. Now, this is interesting. A mysterious phenomenon causes individuals to experience the fears and traumas of others through everyday objects they touch. That has some potential. Okay, so just to recap what we did here, we didn't have an idea for a story, so we started off with, and I'll share this too. I'm going to share all of this stuff. Here is my, um, this is my persona for a horror story writer. Okay. And this is what it should look like. And because I'm not trying to write a novel, and that's the main thing here, this is that separates me from a lot of other people who are writing. They're trying to write novels and blog posts and things like that. I'm not trying to write a novel. I'm not even trying to write a novella. I'm trying to get a 2,000 word short story so I can post on YouTube. And the point of doing these stories really is to test the process and test my creativity, test my prompting. But we know again that AI tries to aggregate to the top of the curve. So we're going to have it eliminate the top three themes, the top three type of protagonists. We want to just get rid of those standard archetypes, those standard storylines. Get rid of them. All right. And and I specifically say the uncanny valley and the unsettling mundane. I'm very specific about that. And here's why. The uncanny valley, that is that thing that says that there is a object, an artificial intelligence that's trying to be human over here, and there's the human over here, and that valley between the two is how we recognize it. And we know when something is not human that's trying to be human. We can attribute human characteristics on an artificial subject. But what we don't like is something trying to pretend to be human. Okay. So that's why we have an easier time with Siri versus all of this other AI stuff that's coming out, because it's trying to be human and it's not, and we can see it. Whereas Siri is not human, we attribute human characteristics to it so we can relate to it. It's a weird little thing that humans do. The unsettling mundane is really forcing the AI to look at just the basic things. Like here it says a piano is one. The tuning of a piano is one. A mannequin in the store is another. Just touching, some kid throws a frisbee, you touch the frisbee, all of that kid's fear is now in you and you can sense it. Imagine going through life touching things and feeling everyone's fear. Um, that is so these three stories are great. And then it's just me going through that same process of parsing this out. So if I wanted to write chapter three, what I'm going to do is take my story. I'm going to try to build the characters. I'm going to try to build the story beats. And then I'm going to go through what I just did and say, okay, for each of these story beats, go ahead and write the story using dialogue to carry the story. I tend to like dialogue because dialogue is most interesting. Although ChatGPT doesn't do great with dialogue, that's when you do your editing. But that's it. Okay. So we are at 51 minutes. I'm going to go 9 more minutes because this was really about story, but you can see how we take all of these things into play. But let's take something here. Let's do something, and let's ask ChatGPT for this. Um, my spelling is off. All right, so we're gonna see if we can get what the. So we're gonna get a style here. Okay. And you can see it's really going detailed here, but this is what I'm going to do. Sound design. So it's giving me everything. I said cinematic is just giving me everything. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my, see, here's the thing about this is the thing about having these templates, because this is how we get ChatGPT to really do what we want. Okay. Okay. So this here, this is the benefit of having these templates, is that I can tell it to do this and we can just take this. Now it says form of a David Fincher film. Let's do this. All right. So DALL-E 3 is not going to allow us to use it's not going to allow us to use David Fincher's name. Okay. So we have to get the style of David Fincher without using uh, David Fincher's name. Okay. So now we have that. We can take this over into GP4 DALL-E 3, post it, and then see what we get. So this is the good thing. When I talk about dealing with AI, I have a theme, and it's called Ideate. And that's what we've been doing. We start off with some ideas. What do we want to do? Then we have our direction. All right. Okay. So there we go. All right. And now we could basically create a lot of other things that go with this, but the direction is that template. I know what I want, so we have to direct it. It gave me David Fincher's name. I know I can't use his name, so we got rid of it, and then we can start building from here. The enhancing part is that back and forth that you do. The back and forth that goes back, as you can see with my story, that story was, I didn't write that story with just off the bat and said, here's the story, and ChatGPT gave it to me. We went back and forth over that story, just even on the mundane things of the endings and how it ends and the perspective and, all of those things. And then finally, it's the final assessment. Is the story good enough to deliver? That's my call. I'll read the story, I'll go through it, I'll tweak it. If I don't like the dialogue, I'll change it, and I do the final assessment. So the final story you hear is after I've let Microsoft Word read it to me. Okay, so I'm going to let Microsoft Word read it to me. Anything I hear that I doesn't like, I'm changing it, but I'm not going back to ChatGPT after that. Once it's kind of like, hey, here's your final story, then I'm doing my final edits. Okay. So this was a lot. I could probably take this, make it a 3-hour video, but I kind of just want to do an hour. So to get over it, what I'm going to do is collect all of this information, put all of this out, and I'm going to post it in the description of this video so you have it. And I'm going to even share all of these links. So I'm going to keep these links live for a little bit before I just dump all of it. But I'll keep the links live for a while. But I'm going to try to collect all of this information, and then at least so you guys have my templates of how I did it. I do believe like my haunted scribe. Let's see what we can do. The original prompt, the original stories, the edits, the links to these, the final story, how I did the prompt design, how I did the images, and we'll throw the haunted scribe in here so we can have our custom instruction. So we'll put all of this in a single document and post it. So that way you guys have all of the the story notes for this live. And on Thursday's video, I'm going to take one part of this video and kind of deep dive into how I do it. Probably looking at the seed of in DALL-E 3, something I just learned recently. All right. That is it for me, folks. I appreciate it. Last week was a good week for me, and please subscribe, like, and we'll just keep creating and showing you guys how I do it. I'd probably do it differently, but again, Quick Start Creative is only here to help you get over the initial hump of all of this stuff, not to make you the master. Okay, so my hope is that you follow me, you learn a little, and then that helps you go off to these other guys who are doing great work, and you understand them a little bit more, and you just kind of get that foundational stuff. So that's what we're here for. All right, peace out, and we're done.